There is a specific kind of loneliness that comes from caring about something most people in your life treat as someone else's problem. It is not ordinary loneliness. It has a particular texture. It is the loneliness of sitting in a room full of people who are fine and not being able to be fine. Not because anything is wrong with you, not because you have misread the situation, but because you are holding something real that the room has collectively agreed not to hold. This video is going to name that experience with more precision than most content will attempt. And then it is going to do something more useful than tell you others feel it too. It is going to show you why the room feels so empty, and why that feeling, as accurate as it is in some ways, has also been lying to you about the size of your actual situation. Here is the room, described as precisely as possible. You are at a dinner. Someone mentions a wildfire in passing, the way you'd mention traffic. The conversation moves on in about 4 seconds. You notice your jaw do something. You decide not to follow the thread, because you have done that before, and you know how it goes. You know how it goes because you have learned through repetition what happens when you are the person who doesn't let it drop. The mood shifts. Someone makes a joke. Someone else says something about how we can't live in a bunker. And then you are the problem in the room. Not the thing you were trying to talk about, but you. So you stop bringing it up. You learn the specific social arithmetic of when it is and is not worth it. And the arithmetic almost always returns the same answer. What happens next is quieter and harder to name. You start to edit yourself before you even open your mouth. You have the thought, you feel the thing, and then, before anyone else is involved, you close it back down. Because the social cost of opening it is something you have already priced. And the effect of this, over time, is a particular kind of exhaustion. Not the exhaustion of doing too much. The exhaustion of holding something continuously in a context that does not acknowledge it. That cost gets named here because almost nothing else names it. The specific tiredness of being someone for whom this is not optional in environments where everyone around you has decided it is. Now here is where something important needs to be said. And it is not reassurance. It is a structural observation that changes what the loneliness actually means. The room feels empty. But the room is not as empty as it feels. Here is a number that is worth sitting with. According to the Yale Program on Climate Change Communication, which runs the largest ongoing national survey of American climate attitudes, 65% of Americans say they rarely or never discuss climate change with family or friends. 65%. That number includes a lot of people who are concerned. Who are alarmed, actually. The same research consistently finds that somewhere around half of Americans, sometimes more, fall into the alarmed or concerned categories. So what you have is a situation where roughly half the country is carrying some version of this weight, and 65% of the country is not talking about it. And here is what that silence is actually telling you. The silence around you is not primarily a measure of indifference. It is a measure of the same calculation you are making. The people at your table are also doing the math. Some of them are also deciding it is not worth the cost. Some of them are also quietly relieved when the subject moves on. Not because they don't care, but because they have learned, like you, that caring out loud in most social environments is a particular kind of risk. There is a term in climate communication research for this pattern. The perception gap. It describes the consistent finding that people who are concerned about climate systematically underestimate how many others share that concern. They look at the silence of the room and they read it as absence, when what they are actually looking at is a room full of people who have all independently made the decision to be quiet. A peer-reviewed study from the University Medical Center Hamburg-Eppendorf, published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, found a significant and direct association between climate anxiety and both loneliness and perceived social isolation, specifically noting that people who score high in climate concern tend to feel cut off from a society they perceive as not sharing that concern. The word perceive matters in that sentence. The research is not saying the isolation isn't real. It is saying that the gap between the perception and the reality is part of what is making the isolation worse. You are not imagining the silence, but you may be misreading it. And there is an important difference between those two things. Here is the part that most content skips, because naming it honestly is uncomfortable, and naming it dishonestly would be worse. The mechanism has a cost, and the cost is not just social awkwardness. When you are the person who holds something that the people around you don't seem to hold or appear not to hold, over time, what happens is not just loneliness. It is a specific kind of grief, the grief of not being fully known by the people you love. Not because they don't love you, but because the part of you that carries this, the part that reads the wildfire news and cannot put it down the way the table did, that part has no place in your most ordinary conversations. Psychologists have a term for grief that has no socially recognized form. Disenfranchised grief. Grief that doesn't get a ritual, a name, a ceremony. Grief that exists without an agreed-upon outlet. Most of what people in your position carry is disenfranchised in exactly this way. The mourning for species you will never see. The specific weight of watching a summer that your parents wouldn't recognize. The thing that happens in your chest when a child asks you about the world they're going to inherit and you have to calculate your answer before you give it. None of that has a form. None of that gets a funeral or a ceremony or even a conversation in most of the environments you move through daily. And so it gets carried, quietly. In rooms where nobody asks about it, there is also a secondary cost, and this one is worth naming separately. The self-censorship itself changes you over time. Not dramatically. But there is something that happens when you spend years closing a part of yourself down before anyone else even has the chance to respond. You start to lose the habit of opening it. You stop expecting to be met there. You start to feel that this part of you, the part that takes this seriously, is something you carry alone by definition. That is the most precise way to say what the room has cost you. Not just loneliness, the slow assumption that this is simply how it will always be. And that assumption, that one, specifically, is where the mechanism has done the most damage, because it is the assumption this video exists to interrupt. If what this video is naming is something you have been carrying for a long time, and if part of what you need is not just the frame but the company, there is something in the description built for exactly that. Not a quick fix. A structured program, 8 weeks, combining the psychological work with the practical, and a community of people navigating the same room. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Now, the honest part. Knowing the perception gap exists does not automatically fix the specific dinner table you sit at on Thanksgiving. That objection is worth taking seriously, because the easy answer to this video is to say, great, statistically I'm not alone. The people in my kitchen still are. That's fair. The research doesn't reach into your specific relationships and change them, but here is what it does change. It changes what you are reading when the person across from you goes quiet after you bring it up. Before this video, the silence read as, they don't care, or they think you're being dramatic, or this is not the kind of person they want to be around when you're being this version of you. After this video, if the mechanism lands, the silence has more possible meanings. They may be doing the same math you do. They may have had this thought themselves and decided, for their own reasons, not to carry it out loud. They may be more there than their silence suggests. This is not optimism. This is a more accurate read of what silence actually means in this context, given what the data shows about how many people are quietly holding something they have also learned not to say. What that means practically is this. You don't have to convert anyone. You don't have to make the dinner table a climate seminar. You are not failing this cause by not doing that. But there may be one person in your life, not the most resistant one, not the dinner table in its full assembly. One person, probably someone you trust, with whom you have not yet tried opening this in a low-stakes way. Not to convince them, not to make a point, just to find out if the silence was indifference or calculation. That is the smallest, most honest version of the exit from this room. Not a community event, not a difficult conversation you've been avoiding for years. One person, one question, one finding out. And if the answer is that the silence was genuinely indifference, that is real information too. Not everyone in your life will meet you there. That is true and worth accepting rather than spending years renegotiating. But the assumption that no one will, that assumption is costing you more than the actual reality justifies. The room is not as empty as the mechanism has led you to believe. That is the honest version. Not a promise that everyone around you secretly shares your concern. A more accurate map of what the silence actually means. If finding the room where you don't have to do the math before you speak feels like the next step from here, what's in the description takes that further, in a structured way. What's the conversation you've stopped trying to have? The one you decided at some point probably wasn't worth it anymore. Here is where this video actually leaves you. Not with a statistic, not with a challenge, With a more accurate picture of the room you have been sitting in, the loneliness is real. The exhaustion of self-censorship is real. The grief of not being fully known by the people you love, that is real too, and it does not stop being real just because the numbers say more people care than you thought. Both things are true simultaneously, but the part that has been telling you the room is empty, the part that reads every silence as a verdict, that part has been working from incomplete information. The mechanism that produces climate loneliness is the same mechanism that keeps everyone quiet, including the people sitting across from you. The silence is not a verdict. It never was. It is a measure of how completely the social cost of caring out loud has been distributed across everyone who carries this, so evenly, so quietly, that each person ends up believing they are the only one paying it. You are not the only one paying it. And more importantly, you are not someone whose care is defined by how completely it is recognized in the rooms you happen to be in right now. The part of you that holds this, the part that couldn't let the wildfire pass in 4 seconds, that part is not a burden you are inflicting on the people around you. It is accurate perception. It is the specific thing that makes any of what comes next possible. Imperfect and coherent. Carrying something real in a room that is less empty than it looks. That is what you are. That is more than enough to start from.